Before we get going with this week's show, a word from many of our friends. Let's begin with the Breeders' Cup. The action continues across the country this weekend with 14 Breeders' Cup win-and-you're-in races. Keeneland hosts 9 races from Friday, the 7th of October through Sunday, the 9th of October. 2 more races will be held at Aqueduct on Saturday and Sunday, and finally 3 from Santa Anita on Saturday. Coverage all weekend can be found on FanDuel TV with special coverage on Saturday on CNBC and Fox Sports 2, but also on Sunday on CNBC, because I'll be on both of those shows. I won't be at Keeneland. I'll be in Connecticut, but we'll be covering Keeneland. Don't miss it. The Breeders' Cup Challenge Series rolls on, and we are in the nitty-gritty right now as we inch closer and closer to the World Championships. BetMakers. Fixed odds betting powered by BetMakers is back and in effect at Monmouth Park, and the early returns are fantastic, with 70% of winners paying more on fixed odds than they are on the tote. Fixed odds wagering is now available throughout the state of New Jersey. This is an exciting new way to bet that really puts the power to get value in your hands. The odds you bet are the odds you get. You will continue to hear more about fixed odds betting opportunities across the In the Money Media Network. Woodbine. Saturday brings us a slew of stakes races north of the border at Woodbine. Leading the show is the Grade 1 E.P. Taylor Stakes at 1.25 miles on the turf. Additionally, the Grade 2 Nearctic Stakes, the Grade 3 Durham Cup, and the Woodbine Cares and Ontario Racing Stakes, all happening on Saturday. You don't want to miss out on the action. For more information from our friends at Woodbine, head on over to www.woodbine.com. And last but certainly not least, Santa Anita Park. $5,000 Showviver is back. Play in Santa Anita's free online game. Select one horse a day to compete for prize money across 5 different categories. And again, you can play for free at santanita.com/contest. Speaking of santanita.com/contest, $14,000 Santa Anita Pick'em has returned. An online contest mixing popular sports props, including horse racing and football, offered every Saturday and Sunday for a chance at $1,000 per contest day. And we're not done. More contests. Santa Anita's Live Money Challenge schedule. Compete against the best and win big in Santa Anita's handicapping tournaments. You can play on Express Bet or on track to go after a $5,000 bonus. For the full schedule for those contests, for more information about Santa Anita Pick'em, as well as the Showviver contest, head on over to santanita.com/contests. Now, on to episode 133. Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show, part of the In the Money Media Network. My name is Matt Bernier. Follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Today is Monday, October the 3rd, 2022. It's episode 133 of the pod. However you listen, thank you for doing so. Many ways to find the show: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, InTheMoneyPodcast.com, just to name a few. You can also watch and listen along over on YouTube. Search bar Matt Bernier Show. You will get this episode along with the 132 prior. As always, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, make sure the bell icon's lit up. That way you get notified anytime new content is uploaded to the In the Money Media channel. This show, the Players Podcast, Horse Players Happy Hour. We begin the playoffs on Thursday, myself and PTF, and many other things as we get closer and closer to the Breeders' Cup. And that's what this week's show is going to be about. We're going to go rapid fire at the beginning, going through some races from New York, Kentucky, and California this past weekend that may have Breeders' Cup implications, and then we'll shift and go rapid fire with Week 4 in the NFL with some projections and some thoughts. So let's not waste any time. It's late in the day, got a bit of a hectic day today, so I'm going to try to just blow through these things and give you some ideas, and some will be kind of Captain Obvious, and some, I don't know. You'll be the ones to decide if they're not Captain Obvious or there's something worthwhile in there. But point is, many races, and there are many more coming up this weekend. As mentioned at the top in the ad read, whether it be Keeneland, whether it be New York, whether it be California, I believe there are 14 win-and-you're-in races coming up this weekend. I will be in Stamford for NBC. I think we're on CNBC both days, Saturday and Sunday, covering racing from Keeneland. And it's that time of year. I mentioned it last week. Now is the time to go and do your work, try to get ahead of things, and that's hopefully what this show, without showing replays and going through some of the other pieces, will at least help you maybe get a jump start on your handicapping. Maybe you take a couple notes and you file them away. Maybe you don't immediately go into Formulator, but I would strongly encourage you after these races, even if it's just a side piece, a little side thing that you use to kind of go through, and as you're watching tape and you're taking notes, listen to this show and listen to my ideas and either agree or disagree. Make a note, say he's an idiot. Make a note, say he couldn't be more right. Whatever your opinion is. It's the beauty of handicapping. New York, Saturday. Let's begin. We're going to go in reverse order. So the Champagne was the last of the big races, and I'm not going over all the races. It's the ones that I believe potentially have implications going forward. Blazing Sevens wins the Champagne for Chad Brown, 91 Beyer speed figure, 110 time form US rating, over a very, very wet racetrack in New York. Unfortunately, the remnants of the hurricane, and thoughts with everybody that's affected by that, whether it's down in Florida or anywhere else along the way, for whatever reason. But the wet weather showed up in New York just in time for the big races. And Blazing Sevens, who I was concerned that the wet track would not be to his advantage. By the way, tip of the cap to PTF. He tabbed this one on Saturday. We did okay with some of the races that we talked about on Saturday on Horse Players Happy Hour. He liked Blazing Sevens. I liked Senor Buscador down in the ACAC at Churchill Downs. A couple of winners there, 6-1, and this horse is, I believe, 8-1. So, if you're listening to it, pays, as Pete would say, it pays to listen to, in this case, Horse Players Happy Hour. Blazing Sevens is an interesting horse. Ran fast in the debut. Again, that bomb and the hopeful made me think that he wouldn't appreciate the wet weather, so I didn't really give him much. I didn't give him much time. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, of course he can. He's already run fast, but are the conditions going to be suited to his liking? Is he actually going to get out there and be able to strut his stuff and run to his full capability or his full potential?" Clearly, he did. And I like that he's shown that ability to be in and amongst horses. He split rivals surrounding the far turn, got out into the clear, and I thought he finished quite well. The numbers would put him... So there's some other pieces to think about as well. Where does a 91 Beyer speed figure stack up presently? And then compare it to the rest of the pack, who he would be, taking on. Whether it's a horse like Forte, who I believe we're supposed to see at Keeneland in the Breeders' Futurity. Cave Rock, I believe, is the horse out on the West Coast for Bob Baffert, who's won the Futurity, and he's got Beyers of 101 and 98. I had chatted with Nick Luck prior to recording this for his podcast, and I had brought up Tyler's Tribe and how I'm very interested in that horse for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think he would make all the sense in the world. And then I, quite literally, right before I started recording this, I read an article, I believe it was from Mary Rampolini in the Daily Racing Form, that they're going to go to the Turf Sprint, the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And I'm a little bit disappointed because I think he would actually have a big chance in the Juvenile. The Turf Sprint, I just think crazy things can happen. And speed in turf sprints is much different than speed going a route of ground. And if you're afraid that he can't get I don't know. I guess that's another conversation for another day. I was just very, very disappointed that that's the path that they're going to go with Tyler's Tribe. So, but take him out of the equation. Blazing Sevens fits in there about as well as anyone. He's got the pedigree to suggest 2 turns isn't going to be a problem. He's got the connections in Chad Brown and company. And he's proven himself both on a fast main track and a wet main track. So no real knocks against Blazing Sevens. Dancing Buck in the Turf Sprint. I'm not going to go deep into this because we've talked about it here on this show, or if you're new, it's the first time you've listened. Turf sprints, not my forte, not my cup of tea. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading a foreign language that I have no even basic knowledge of, because I see, the X, Y, and Z, this all makes sense, and the horse goes out there and runs 8th in a field of 10. Turf sprints just suck to me. I hate them. I get why we have them, and I know they're useful, but if I never had to play another one, I wouldn't. So Dancing Buck's 103 Beyer and 121 unadjusted time form US rating, 118 pace adjusted because of the slow fractions throughout. I mean, on paper, it looks good. I have no idea if it's going to translate against better horses at Keeneland in, call it 4 weeks' time. The Miss Grillo, Pleasant Passage. I had mentioned her when we talked about that race on Horse Players Happy Hour, in that she needs to improve, but for her to win first out of the box for Shug, yeah, if you want to say she saved ground every inch of the way in the debut, and you want to sort of downgrade her for that, that's fine. Technically a sound, logical explanation, but it was a very, very tight spot for her to squeeze through down on the inside, up the wood. And for her to be able to do that as willingly as she did first time out, I thought was really encouraging. And The race was run a little bit funny. I mean, she went right to the front as opposed to rallying from off of it, but she was very comfortable out there. Chad's filly was right there pressing her throughout, and I actually liked that at the end of the run, Pleasant Passage was inching away from her. If you really watch the final few jumps, she started inching away, and I think that bodes well, that this is now a filly who, again, goes out for a trainer who typically does better as they get older. She's shown that she can handle cutting the ground and slightly firmer going. She's shown that she can win on a lead and off of it at different racetracks. I think there's a lot to like about Pleasant Passage, and I don't know that she'll be among the favorites. 78 Beyer speed figure, a 99 Timeform US rating, adjusted to a 100. The numbers seem to jive. I was encouraged by that performance. I think she's pretty interesting as far as a potential runner on Friday at Keeneland for the Breeders' Cup. The Woodward, the race that probably everyone is most interested in, that and the Lucas Classic. Life is Good wins. 97 Beyer speed figure, 128 Timeform US rating with the pace adjusted number, a 126. So there is a fair discrepancy there, somewhere in that like 10-ish point range. The 97 Beyer, I believe, would be the lowest of Life is Good's career. Beyer speed figures are not created for the runs over in Dubai, but for his official Beyers, I believe the 97 is the only time he's never earned a triple digit. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure. If you look at it purely on the numbers, and let's say you're using the 97 Beyer, you're looking at it going, he's got no chance against the top 3 or 4 in the Breeders' Cup Classic, never mind just Flightline. The Timeform US rating is not nearly as damning. 128, 126 with the numbers tweaked. He's still slower, and it even with that, it's a step back from the Whitney and some of his other big efforts. But my opinion has not changed on Life is Good based on that performance in the Woodward. I look at it and say, I didn't learn anything. I suppose I did. He can run on a wet track, which I suppose there's a chance that we're going to have that in Lexington. But I wasn't crazy about him at 1.25 miles against the likes of Flightline and Epicenter going into the race. The performance didn't do anything to make me think even less of him, despite the fact that the figs would suggest he regressed. I do believe it's a matter of a means to an end for this horse. The last thing you want to do is bottom him out in the prep for the race that you're going to need to get everything out of him. So I don't typically believe in the whole idea of, 80% cranked up, this, that, and the other. I think that can be overblown from time to time. But in an instance like this, it was a 4-horse field. Law Professor, I think, is a good horse. If you'll recall, I brought him up when I talked briefly about that Kentucky Downs turf race, going way back to his last dirt race at Oaklawn. I loved him that day. He had a miserable trip, and he was gone for 7 months, 6 months, whatever it was. He, by no means is Law Professor a bum, but I don't think anyone's going to, mistaken him for a Breeders' Cup Classic runner. And that may be for some what sours the whole run and performance and victory from Life is Good. My logic, my feeling is, if you liked him going into that race, don't let the 97 Beyer or even the sort of light Timeform US fig compared to what he's accustomed or typically earns, don't let that turn you off. If anything, you're going to get rewarded. You're going to get a better price, because people are creatures of habit, and those that only factor in numbers. There are many different camps in handicapping. I'm not breaking any news here. You all know this. But there are some people that just look at the numbers. They buy a daily racing form. They buy, a program with your Equibase ratings in there, or whatever, Thorograph numbers, whatever they may be. And to be fair, I don't know what the Thorograph number came back for with this race. But there are people that are just numbers players. I think that's a valid way of going about handicapping. But those people are going to look at it and say, this horse has no shot in hell of getting close to Flightline. And arguably, he may be trending the wrong direction. The tape people are probably going to look at it and go, no, he wasn't as brilliant. He didn't get away from his competition the way that you would think he normally would. The pace was much softer, so in theory he should have had something left for the stretch run. And, he had to work to stay ahead of Law Professor. I like to put all the things together, and even having said that, putting them all together, I'm looking at it saying, no, visually it was probably the worst performance we've seen from him since Dubai. On the numbers, on the clock, probably one of the slower ones. And I'm good with it. I think it was fine. He's still an extremely good horse. By the way, it's still a grade 1. Still cashes the check. I think it was a means to an end. Let's get a little final tune-up into him, and let's have him ready to go in 4 or 5 weeks' time at Keeneland to take on the Bear. I think it was a good effort. I really do. Numbers might suggest otherwise, but I think that was a solid prep. It's exactly what I would be wanting for a final stepping stone. I want to see the horse get out there. Needs to do a little bit of work. No, doesn't run a hole in the wind. But we've seen that from time to time, that final prep, they almost run too well. And then you get to the Breeders' Cup, and maybe it's taking a little bit out of him. I don't think that's the case with Life is Good. I think he has plenty in reserve, and we'll find out if he's good enough on the day. On Sunday, the Frisette Chocolate Gelato wins the fillies version of the 2-year-old Grade 1 in New York, an 83 buyer. I liked the way that she moved around in the far turn. I thought she was a little up and down at the end of the run. Could be just inexperience. Pedigree would suggest that she's going to be right there. The 83 buyer. There weren't Timeform US ratings earlier on when I was collecting the data. I think she's fine. And I guess it's just a bigger picture or bigger point for me with the girls right now. The 2-year-old girls on dirt, I've not seen any one race that I'm like, yep, she's the one. She's the one. I like her. I think they're all fine. I don't think I've seen anybody yet. And correct me if I'm wrong. Beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Is there a filly that I've just slipping my mind that she's actually the bee's knees and she's run a giant race and I'm forgetting her? Because it would be a welcome mistake. I would appreciate at this point, even if it's someone who's a little bit off the radar. If somebody's at least run big, visually impressive races. The 2-year-old girls on dirt, I'm just kind of meh. And we'll find out. When you put them all together, those can sometimes be the best races, both from an entertainment standpoint and from a gambling standpoint. And then the Pilgrim, another victory for Todd. Major Dude tries turf for the first time. I thought he was great. I thought it was a really, really strong performance. 76 buyer, not going to knock your socks off. But big picture, first time on turf. He's by Bolt Doro, who's off to a great start as a stallion. Turned away a good Chad horse who was 3-5 in the wagering. And I don't think that horse hung. You're going to look at it and say, well, he had every opportunity to go by, and that's true. But Major Dude did something very similar to what Pleasant Passage did the day before, where I felt like at the end of the run, actually started to kind of inch away again. And if Major Dude has the tactical ability combined with the finish and stamina, he becomes interesting, I think. And I don't get the impression that he'll be among the favorites for the juvenile turf. That's a race that historically has been pretty well dominated by the Europeans. We'll see what comes over. But, I see no reason to think that this horse can't contend with anything else as far as the boys domestically are concerned. Big weekend for Todd. Big weekend for New York. I think these are all good stepping stones. I think I would venture a guess that most of these, I'll exclude the turf sprint, not because of the horse, but because of this guy, the handicapper. I don't know anything about him. I think most of these horses are going to at least have a say. And you can make proper cases for them as far as the Breeders' Cup is concerned. Let's shift to Kentucky. The only race I'm going to talk about is the Lucas Classic. I tweeted afterward that I saw the replay a little while after, and I know it sounds like I have just like the utmost disdain for Hot Rod Charlie. And I don't mean it to be that way. I think he's a really cool horse. I'd love to own him. He shows up and he dances all the dances. But this is kind of what my point is. For all the people that earlier this year sat there and said, Rich Strike, I mean, lightning in a bottle. It'll never happen again. He's a bum, this, that, and the other. I agreed with the lightning in a bottle thing, that the setup for the Derby victory itself was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. And I've said multiple times, he should have been 300-1 in the Kentucky Derby based on his paper. His paper was god-awful compared to the rest of the field. But he comes back, and then people looked at the Belmont and said, see, he's no good. Well, I've said it before. The Belmont's a terrible, terrible point to use to either confirm or deny your opinion, because the race itself is it's a unicorn. It's an anomaly. The Travers showed that he's a good horse. Just missed out on a photo with Zandon. Zandon comes back, runs second in the Pennsylvania Derby. He's in just behind Cyberknife. Cyberknife runs third in the Pennsylvania Derby. If you still believe that Rich Strike was a fluke and a bum, I mean, Hot Rod Charlie, by all accounts, is a good older horse. He's probably a top 5, top 6 older horse, and he'll be in the top 6, I would say, in wagering for the Classic. Just quickly, if you rattle them off, assuming they all go, which we'll talk about with the California race in a minute. Flightline, Epicenter, Life is Good. There's your 3. Taba 4. Olympiad 5. Probably Hot Rod Charlie 6. You know, in that 15-1 range, 20-1 range. He's a good horse. He just often finds one better than him, and he nearly found one better than him in Rich Strike, but give him credit. He re-rallied on the inside. The numbers are light, and that's the tough thing, is that a 101 buyer and a 116 pace-adjusted 118 Timeform US rating, that might not even get you a piece of the Classic. 4th, 5th, maybe. Assuming everybody runs to their capabilities. Have to comment on the incident. Earlier in the weekend, I didn't even know about the Ecuador race where a jock apparently pushed another guy off of a horse and nearly killed him. We saw the Sumion thing over at Longchamp, like a blatant elbow, which, again, could have killed the guy. And then you see this from Leon. It's like, what are you... I'm not brave enough, even if I was of that stature. I'm not brave enough to do what these men and women do on a day-to-day basis. But logically, what are you doing? I mean, I get it. You want to win a race. We have seen in other jurisdictions, race riding, herding, you name it. I mean, he damn near knocked Gaffalione into the rail. Not the horse, Hot Rod Charlie, the jock. He's laying all over him. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, that kind of thing is so idiotic. And if it was the saddle that slipped, fine. It surely didn't look like it. And the stewards aren't buying it either because he just got whacked for 15 days. Which is probably light. Probably got lucky. I mean, I said it on Nick's pod. Nick Luck's podcast. You can listen to it. It's probably out now. He brought up, is it time for Rich Strike to, for a rider change? And maybe it sounds cruel, but I mean, look, it was a once-in-a-lifetime setup in the Derby, but it was also a once-in-a-lifetime ride. He weaved his way in and out, been seen a million different times. But if Rich Strike is a borderline grade 1 horse, which I think he probably is. Keep in mind, he's a 3-year-old. He's still, and he nearly just beat one of the better older horses that we've had. Maybe it's time for a grade 1 jock. And I don't mean that as a slight to Sonny Leon, but I mean, he doesn't ride in grade 1s, really. If I've got a horse that rallies from off the pace, does his best at the end, I want to get a rider who does his best at the end. I want Joel Rosario. I want Rosario on Rich Strike. Preferably in the Clark at Churchill Downs. But I guess if there's a scenario in which the pace is hot in the Classic, you throw him in there and you can clunk up and get a piece. I think the Clark is the right call, but to each their own. But it had to be acknowledged. I mean, just it's like what are you doing, man? You're gonna get somebody really, really hurt out there. Back to the horses. California. This is where we'll wrap up these. Hello. Sorry, guys. We'll wrap up this conversation. This part of it, anyway. The Awesome Again. Defunded wins. 99 buyer, 120 time form US rating, adjusted to a 123. Defunded's not winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. We can all agree on that. The concern now, though, is, look, that running style for Country Grammar, trying to rally from a few lengths off it. I know he wasn't a mile out of it, but that running style is always difficult at Santa Anita on the main track, going 2 turns. You are much better being where Defunded was, where Slow Down Andy was. That's where you make your hay. So for him to try to rally, I still think he should have won. But, he was running against it a little bit. And I know earlier in the card, horses rallied from second last and last or something like that. There are, exceptions to the rule. Those 2 horses were, the winner, I believe, is 2-5. But more often than not, at Santa Anita, if you're paying any attention to track profiles and things like that, 2 turns on dirt, you need to be on or pressing the lead to really, truly have a good chance. Having said that, the good Country Grammar wins that race, even with that trip that he pulled. And Baffert, I don't want to misquote or missay something, but he kind of made it sound like we may not end up going to the Classic because maybe he's a little bit dull. And I forgive me for not giving appropriate credit, but I had seen someone bring it up a few weeks ago. Or no, maybe it was first brought up a few weeks ago, but then it was certainly brought up on Saturday. And I brought it up with Nick. You look at Flightline, and I'm going to say 3 horses that really tried to go at him, tried to run at him in his last 2 runs, Pacific Classic and the Met Mile. They haven't been the same. Speaker's Corner is the most obvious. Coming off of a giant win in the Carter, he tries to run with Flightline early on. Flightline absolutely smacks him in the head. And Speaker's Corner has been a shell of himself since. And he was dreadful on Saturday after a pretty poor performance out of Del Mar. Happy Saver, say what you will. Yeah, he came back and ran well in the Whitney, but the minute Olympiad bounced out of the Foster and didn't run well at Saratoga the first time, and somebody had to finish second, whether it was him or Hot Rod Charlie or whatever. He came back, Happy Saver, and was terrible in the Lucas Classic. Terrible. I know, he's a little bit tight. He wasn't running. And now Country Grammar, who I maintain, I think he ran his race in the Pacific Classic. I think it was better than what some of the paper would suggest. And it's almost as if he got cracked. Where you know what you're capable of. You usually beat everyone. You're up there either beating or just narrowly losing. And then you lose by the length of the stretch. There is an element, a little bit of I would assume, it's the same as, think of it from a human aspect in some sort of a sporting event. Where early on, it's a team you're supposed to be running with. Or you know what? Gambling contest, handicapping contests. Somebody hit something big early. There's a psychological blow where you look at it and you're like, shit. I'm making it up. If you're playing in a pick and pray, somebody hits a capper in the first race, $64. Now I can't play the odds at this point because all my picks are in, and I got to make up. I got to get to at least 65, and in all likelihood, that person just got such a massive head start. There's a bit of a psychological piece to it. I would assume horses are no different. They're athletes. They're also human. Or they're also humans. They're not human. Horses are not human beings. But they are living beings. And confidence is a thing. We've seen horses that can get a little sour. They need a little bit of time off. I wonder if he just got cracked. by Flightline. I mean, it's a gift when a horse can go and do that. I mean, in terms of Flightline, to be able to go out there and you're so much better that you make good horses go, oh, God, man, I know what happened last time. I didn't get within, 25 feet of his rear end. What am I supposed to do now? The Awesome, again, I don't think, especially if Country Grammar doesn't go, I don't think that race has any impact on the Breeders' Cup. Even the Dirt Mile. Defunded, fine horse. Finished second in a Grade 1 earlier this year. Wins this one here. I don't think this race has any effect on the Breeders' Cup. The Lucas Classic, I could see Hot Rod Charlie. I joked earlier in the year, but I think it's true. I'd be very interested in him as far as like an underneath key is concerned in the Classic. Second or third in exactas and tries. I don't think he can win, but I can see him hitting the board at a good price. And maybe even Rich Strike. Maybe it's the Lucas Key. Hot Rod Charlie and Rich Strike underneath. Flightline number 1. And then Key, Hot Rod Charlie and Rich Strike 2 and 3 with all. There it is. Done. Boom. Bang. Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. It's over. We've won. I kid. Those are my thoughts about some of the races from this past weekend. We are going to have many, many more coming up next week. Next week, there's also probably a proper handicapping segment related to Keeneland. That's still in the works, but that's probably on deck as well. So there's going to be a lot to unpack. Next week's show may come out on Tuesday. Maybe recorded on Tuesday. I don't fly back from New York until Sunday because we have 2 shows this weekend. So everything may get pushed back one day, but we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. Let me know what your thoughts are about the races I've talked about and anything else from this past weekend from a racing standpoint as we get closer and closer to the Breeders' Cup beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Now, let's pivot to the NFL week 5? 4? 5? Week 5. I said week 4 earlier, didn't I? Week 5 in the NFL. We're already there. We're already full month into the season. Take a look at some games, some lines, and some projections for some players. All right, bit of a mixed bag as far as the NFL was concerned last weekend. Hopefully, again, more data. I think that the model is certainly on its way to getting a little bit tighter. Some games were spot on. Some of them were way off. Some of the big discrepancies and big swings right now, anyway, are more defensively than any of the guys on offense are doing. But hey, it is what it is. And unfortunately for me, as is the case, it's so funny. I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, he and Cousin Sal talking about going over the lines. And you can, for the week, you pick X amount of winners, you do this, that, and the other. It's the same with the horses or any public handicapping. You always want the stuff that you put out to do well. And in an instance like this, where you're certainly not betting the entire card, I believe the 3 bets that I gave out last week, they all failed miserably. So there's that. And I don't know if any of you bet them, but I did. It's not great. Hopefully better this week. And I have to burn through this because it is tub time for the baby upstairs. So we are going to do rapid fire. I won't give you all the players, but I'll give you a handful of them. Indianapolis at Denver on Thursday night. The Broncos are 3-point favorites. The total's 43. I've got Denver winning 27-16. Matt Ryan, 24 for 36, 212 and a touchdown. Russell Wilson, 19 for 29, 258 and a touchdown. Melvin Gordon's going to... don't get me started. I have a love affair with Javonte Williams, and now he's out for the year and he's blown out. Melvin Gordon, I don't think is particularly good anymore, but 24 carries, 72 yards and a touchdown. Cortland Sutton, 9 targets, 7 catches for 103 yards. As far as Indy is concerned, Jonathan Taylor apparently may be dinged up as well. Got an ankle thing. If he goes, 17 for 87 and a touchdown. Pittman, 10 targets, 7 catches, 62 yards. No plays there for me, even though Denver, I have them comfortably covering that. Thursday night games are a debacle at this point. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole, maybe from a DFS standpoint, though. The Giants at the Packers. The Packers are 8-point favorites. This is the London game. Total's 41.5. We've got the Packers winning by 4. 23-19, but again, London, don't know what's going on there. I have no idea who the quarterback's going to be for the Giants. Daniel Jones got banged up, Tyrod Taylor got banged up. Whomever it is, I have the 2 of them. Their numbers actually projected not much different. 14 for 20, 208 and a touchdown. The real player is Saquon Barkley. 22 carries, 152 yards and a touchdown, and then 3 catches for 33 yards through the air. Aaron Rodgers on the other side, 17 for 27, 245 and a touchdown. A.J. Dillon. Boy, this two-headed monster thing that they've got in the backfield is great. A.J. Dillon, 16 carries for 70 yards. 4 targets, 2 catches, and 19 yards to go along with that through the air. Aaron Jones, 13 carries, 108 yards, and a touchdown. Adds another 22 through the air. Romeo Dobbs, 9 catches for 51. Alan Lazard, 3 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. Houston at Jacksonville. The Jags are 7.5-point home favorites. The total is 45. I have Jacksonville winning 32-18. So maybe you look to the over there. I've got it adding up to 50. Davis Mills throwing a couple of picks, 222, a touchdown and a pick. Trevor Lawrence, 20 for 33, 254, touchdown and a pick. Damian Pierce is starting to really feel it, 13 for 68 and 2 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks, 11 targets, which is the same thing I said last weekend. He's Mills' go-to guy. 6 catches for 57 yards. James Robinson, 20 carries, 101 and 2. Christian Kirk, 5 catches for 88 yards. The Bears at the Vikings. The Vikings are 6.5-point home favorites. The total's 42.5. I have Minnesota winning 29-20. So that's another one. Maybe you look at the over in that spot. Fields, I don't know what to say. I mean, they don't throw the ball. I also don't know what to say about this projection from a yardage standpoint. This could be way off, especially it's basically saying that if he does do what I have him projected to do, they're all going to be giant plays and probably meaning they're coming from behind. 9 for 17 for 272, a touchdown and 2 picks. I don't totally buy the yardage. I think it's probably 100 yards too many, but we'll wait and see. Also, 43 yards on the ground via 9 carries. Khalil Herbert, 14 carries, 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Darnell Mooney, 5 targets, 3 catches, 80 yards. Equanimous St. Brown, Amon-Ra's brother, 3 targets, 1 catch for 57 yards. That's the projection. Just going on the data for the season, guys. On the other side, Cousins, 229, a touchdown and a pick. Dalvin Cook, 20 for 98 and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 6 for 92. And Adam Thielen, 4 for 52 and a touchdown. Again, maybe you lean to the over. The Chargers at the Browns. Chargers are 3-point road favorites. It's interesting. Total is 49.5. I have Cleveland winning 31-27. I was initially saying looking at the money line for the Browns. I believe it's 125. At that point, I'm not going to get cute. I'll take the points, minus 110. But maybe you shade to the over. And not just shade to the over. I've got to go well over. Justin Herbert, 22 for 37, 266, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Austin Eckler finally got it going this weekend. I've got him going for 39 on the ground and a touchdown, and then 48 through the air with a touchdown. Mike Williams, 8 targets. I'm from Europe. 8 targets, 4 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Jacoby Brissett, 23 for 34, 226, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Nick Chubb, 17 carries, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, 61 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Another 20 through the air. Amari Cooper, 6 for 64 and a touchdown. David Njoku, 6 for 56 and a touchdown. So again, I would lean with the Browns plus 3 and go to the over. I know that sounds like a lot especially with a team like Cleveland, who typically just runs the ball, but just, again, telling you what I got. Atlanta at Tampa. Tampa 7.5-point home favorites. Totals 48.5. I have Tampa winning 31-24. So no play there. Maybe you want to look at the over, but Brady got banged up pretty good on his arm last night. I think I texted all my buddies. I was like, when he took that big hit and he fumbled it in the second quarter, in my head, I'm like, he didn't look right when he got up. And then Melissa Stark was mentioning it on the sidelines. I've got him going 31 for 42, 245 and 2. Leonard Fournette, 67 for 1 on the ground, 45 through the air. Russell Gage, 6 for 35. Mike Evans, 6 for 72 and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, 6 for 43 and a touchdown. On the other side, Marcus Mariota, 16 for 27, 235, a touchdown and 2 picks. Another 24 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Cordero Patterson, 86 and a touchdown. Drake London, 6 for 74. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 48. Seattle at New Orleans. The Saints are 4-point home favorites. Totals 45.5. All these numbers, by the way, via the DraftKings Sportsbook from much earlier. I put all these numbers together early Monday morning. I have the Saints winning 27-23. Geno Smith, 22 for 31, 249 and a touchdown. Rashad Penny, 82 for 1 touchdown. 82 and 1 touchdown, I should say, on the ground. Chris Olave, 5 for 92 for the Saints. Really, regardless of whether it's Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston, to be honest, I would probably prefer Andy Dalton. I know that sounds silly, but if it is, I have him projected out at 19 for 25, 328 and a touchdown. Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Buffalo is a 14-point home favorite. The total is 47. I have them winning 34-16. Josh Allen, 30 for 47, 243, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Another 56 on the ground with 2 touchdowns, so 4 touchdowns in all. Devin Singletary, 40 yards on the ground. Stephon Diggs, 10 for 91 and a touchdown. Isaiah McKenzie, 5 for 34 and a touchdown. On the other side, Najee Harris. I mean, the yards per carry, not great. 13 for 32 and a touchdown. Deontay Johnson, 7 targets, 4 catches, 44 yards. Pat Freiermuth, 4 for 48. I have question marks next to George Pickens because if it's confirmed that it's Kenny Pickett, Pickens clearly, both a combination of the preseason and that last game for that second half, there's something there. So Pittsburgh fans, maybe it's a down year, but you can kind of hang your hat on that it seems like those two, they're simpatico. They got something going there. If it's Mitch, then all bets are off. Who knows? Tennessee at Washington. Tennessee is a 2.5-point road favorite. 43.5 is the total. I have Tennessee winning 27-24. Maybe a lean to the over. Tannehill, 15 for 23, 299 and 3 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, 73 and a touchdown on the ground, 37 through the air. Bobby Trees, Robert Woods, 3 for 67 and a touchdown. On the other side, Carson Wentz, 29 for 44, 239, 3 and 1. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 61 yards and a touchdown. Curtis Samuel, 8 catches, 53 yards and a touchdown. And Jahan Dotson, 4 for 37 and a touchdown. I have not one meaningful number to give you for the Dolphins and the Jets because I'm assuming it's going to end up being Teddy. I can't imagine, after all the stuff that's gone on with Tua, I cannot imagine he's playing this week. So I'm just going to give you just a very basic projection of Miami 27, the Jets 19. Detroit at New England. The Patriots 2.5-point home favorites. The total is 47. I think Detroit wins. I hope I'm wrong. I have them winning 26-24. Jared Goff, 22 for 36, 253 and 3 touchdowns with a pick. Jamal Williams, 15 for 72. Still don't know about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I assume he'll be back. Don't know who the quarterback is for the Patriots. I hope it is Bailey Zappi. I don't need to see Brian Hoyer at this point. I just don't. He should be the emergency guy. Zappi, if he goes out there and just completely, craps his pants, dribbles down his leg, fine. Yank him and put Hoyer in, assuming Hoyer's head's all right. But I don't want to see Brian Hoyer. Zappi showed enough. Let him run. Regardless, Damian Harris, 14 for 80 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Passing on 2 games because 2 of these teams are playing tonight. San Francisco and Carolina, Dallas and the Rams. They're both playing on Monday night. So no numbers there. The Eagles at the Cardinals. The Eagles are 5-point road favorites. 49.5 is the total. I've got Philly winning 29-21. Jalen Hurts, 22 for 31, 336, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 43 for a touchdown on the ground. A.J. Brown, 7 for 127 and a touchdown. Devontae Smith killed me in fantasy this week, but neither here nor there. 5 for 83. Dallas Goedert, 5 for 75 and a touchdown. On the other side, Kyler Murray, 27 for 47, 153, 1-1. Adds another 20 on the ground with a touchdown. And Hollywood Brown, 8 for 55 and a touchdown. I think the best game of the weekend, Cincinnati at Baltimore. The Ravens are 3-point favorites. Total is 48. I have Baltimore winning 28-25, so I play the over. About to sneeze. Excuse me. Joe Burrow, 32 for 50, 254, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Joe Mixon, 17 carries, 52 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase, 14 targets, 9 catches, 68 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins, 7 for 73 and a touchdown. On the other side, Lamar Jackson, 19 for 34, 238, 2 touchdowns and a pick. On the ground, 61 yards on 8 carries, adding a touchdown. Then you've got Mark Andrews, 7 for 70 and a touch. And Rashad Bateman, 3 for 66 and a touchdown. We'll wrap things up with the Monday night game. Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 7.5-point home favorites. Total is 53. I have Kansas City winning by 10, 34-24. Derek Carr, 33 for 49, 214 and 2. Josh Jacobs, 49 and a touchdown on the ground, 17 through the air. Devontae Adams, 9 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. Mac Hollins, 6 for 52. Darren Waller, 5 for 34. Pat Mahomes, 26 for 36, 288, 3 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 49 for a touchdown on the ground, 36 and a touchdown through the air. Travis Kelce, 10 targets, 8 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. And Juju Smith-Schuster, 8 targets, 6 catches, 66 yards. There you have it. Give me your thoughts about all of those. Any game in particular you like? Think my predictions suck. This is right. This is wrong. Player, whatever it may be, beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Again, I will be down in Stamford this weekend with Randy Moss and Ahmed Fareed. I believe it's Nick and Britt down at Keeneland going over winning your in action. CNBC on Saturday and Sunday, 2 days worth of racing. Come check us out. We'll have some fun. I will be back home on Monday. I don't know if I'm doing the pod on Monday. Might do it on Tuesday. So if you don't get it when you typically see it, just check back the next day because it'll be there to break down all sorts of different stuff, both football, horses, anything else that goes on. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever it may be, beneath the video player on YouTube or beneath the video player on YouTube. Yeah, or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I'm talking way too fast. I gotta get upstairs. The tub is full. The baby needs to go to bed. Until next week, best of luck however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play. In episode 133 of the Matt Bernier Show.